This is Hell's Gate National Park, a land whose name is a contradiction, for there is nothing hellish about it. Just ask the people who have lived here for over 100 years.
This place, first of all, is a holy place. A place that our ancestors or our elders is a place that is being recognized in our community. When I was very young, I was grazing animal here and fetching, accessing water here. And it was a natural water.
But beneath this harsh beauty lies huge geothermal potential. Local power generating company Kenyan has harnessed the steam here on the eastern edge of the Eastern Rift Valley for decades. But it is their further expansion into this land, funded by multiple multilateral banks, among them the European Investment Bank, that is causing a deep rift between the new explorers of this land and those who have claimed it for generations. The Olkaria Maasai community is made up of about 20,000 people. Multiple villages had to contend with the presence of the power plant. But the land around one of the latter expansions of Kenyan, Olkaria 4, is tied to something even more fundamental to the local people: their culture.
If you trace back many years back, it is well known all over Maasai land. The Maasai like bones, those who predict and foresee, they predicted and they foresaw the village that one day will be seated on top of this, by the side of this gorge. It will find all the traditional hidden treasures. I was born here in a village which is just 600 meters from this village.
Simon turned his old village into a cultural center for tourists to sample true Maasai culture.
The Maasai village is usually alive, especially in the evening, but as a result of Kenyans' need to expand further exploration areas within our place, so they said we are supposed to move out of here because hydrogen sulfide is dangerous to our health.
Olkaria is one of 4 villages that had been settled in August 2014 to make way for the Olkaria 4 plant. In total, 1,000 people were relocated, among them Simon. But the arrangements didn't please the Maasai. A lot of them were unhappy with the lack of consultation before the relocation. They said that not enough houses were built. Those resettled had not got the land titles they were promised. The Maasai also felt that the whole process was clashing with their traditional, predominantly pastoralist lifestyle. In 2014, Jackson Shah, a community activist, brought those complaints to the European Investment Bank and the World Bank, the institutions financing the project. He insisted that the Maasai should have been recognized as indigenous people and been granted the associated benefits.
In fact, I indicated the two major policies. This is the policy of resettlement, and then the issue of indigenous issue policy, which should have been applied. We know there is the issue of benefit sharing, which could have actually been applied if that policy was triggered. But that is another contentious issue among the community because they are gaining nothing from the project.
When we get closer to their new houses in what is called Rapland, it becomes hard to understand why the community would be upset. The neatly built homes in Rapland, the name of their new community, would be impressive in any parts of the country, especially when compared to the mud-walled huts in which these villagers lived just 2 years ago. Still, they miss their former dwellings. Sendero Ole is one of the first villages to have been resettled. While some Maasai people have adopted more urban lifestyles, he belongs to the many in Olkaria who still heed their cultural heritage. Their primary source of income and sustenance is their herds of cattle, goats, and sheep. They are a polygamous indigenous group, and this explains why Sendero has ended up building a new hut for his second wife.
Yes, sababu hii amekuwa sasa amejaa. Kwanza Ntamanduni vile nilikuwa huko nimepoteza. Hii ni nyumba yangu hii. Hii ingine ya bibi ingine. Na hii watoto ya nyumba ile Saidi amekuja tena kujitenga. Na hii tunajitenga. Sasa maisha hiyo sio maisha kwetu inakuwa mzuri.
The resettlement did not meet the condition of livelihood restoration of the people. It came out that the lives of people is worse compared to their life they are living before they will be resettled here.
We would love to have done to maintain the cultural position, like building the manyatas. I mean, it's cheaper than the houses which were built. Yeah. It's cheaper on that. We would have loved to have done that. These are the people themselves who are saying, like now, even we wanted to give them money to go and build the manyatas the way they want them. But they were saying, no, we want good houses to also have a good living.
A joint inspection committee from the World Bank and the EIB complaints mechanism agreed with some of the community's concerns. While the houses provided suited many PAPs, they are inconsistent with the cultural preferences and lifestyles of others. The lack of investments in the Rapland in order to improve its productive potential and in the livelihood restoration measures is adversely affecting the PAP's efforts to bridge the gap in their livelihoods between the time of their relocation and the time those livelihoods can be restored. A mediation agreement facilitated by the EIB and the World Bank is now in place, at least officially. Olkaria's people say the agreement is not being fulfilled by Kenyan. The Maasai community fear they will never get the land titles for their new settlements.
We are living on a land whose topography is unsuitable for our lifestyle. And yet the same land has no guarantee that it will belong to us any day.
We wrote to Kenyan's management for their response to the issues raised here. After numerous attempts to meet with their managing director for an interview, we were unable to get a response by the time of the publishing of this report. As Kenyan pushes on with their project, people on the ground fear that the time for negotiations is running out.
Maasai proverb says there are only two things that a Maasai man should never surrender in life: the sun and the soil. Which means at the end of our cry out, because we had been trying to cry from one avenue to another, failure to that will amount to a sacrifice of life. Otherwise, we will end up saying the Olkaria 4, of which we had been resettled in expense of its construction and the ongoing operation, we are going to stop it.
Another community from the Olkaria Maasai that is feeling the pressure of living next to an energy giant like Kenyan lives barely 20 kilometers away. Mark Ole Kaunga, a Maasai from Isaneto village, claims he was affected by the first expansion, Olkaria 1, and feels that by building the Olkaria power plant, Kenyan went too far.
The companies now, they fail to control the waste. This is, if you see, is now mixed with the natural water. But if you see, it is from the company, it's industrial waste.
He's talking about brine water, one of the waste products of the geothermal energy extraction process. Most of the academic research claims that brine water is harmless to the environment, but the community is certain that the water has a negative effect on their animals and their children.
Area hili imeangamia mifugo, ng'ombe, kondoo na mbuzi. Pia hizo maji inakuja na teremka na ingia mpaka hapa kwa mamuto wakati ya ukame hizo sisi tunatumia watoto, na hizo ni maji chafu. Iko simu inaitwa kosoda, ndio natumia drilling, na hiyo simu mtu kugusa kwa mkono inaweza kata mkono, ama inaweza kula simu sote ya mwili yenye mali inaweza kugusa. Tumepeleka chemchemi za damu, tumepeleka Kemes, Kemiri, mpaka ingine imeenda mpaka Nairobi University kwa wale wa theology.
A community has asked the Kenya Medical Research Institute Center for Microbiology Research to test samples of the water and plants, but Kenyan also commissioned its own study.
Ile analysis tumefanya sisi wenyewe lionyesha ni simu, inaonyesha mifugo yetu imeangamia, lakini analysis imekuja kufanya hao wenyewe ilikuja kusema maji ni sawa, mifugo yako sawa, nasema minyoo ndio imeangamiza mifugo yetu.
Community members claim they were not given the final report from Kenyan, but instead were invited to a presentation on its findings. One community member took photos of the conclusions. The community now claims that Kenyan did not reach the gorge where contamination took place. One thing is clear: the Olkaria project has left the Maasai community deeply divided. The Kenyan energy rush and their fight with Kenyan has forced the Maasai to consider what is the cost of development, and are they standing in the way of progress?
I'm not against the development of the country, but we need to follow the right procedure.